I'm Sharon Jeet Lale. Well, in an hour and a half, Donald Trump and Joe Biden will go head-to-head for their first debate before November's presidential election. A big focus is likely to be President Trump's record in office. He says he has generated historic economic growth, record low unemployment, and lifted millions of Americans out of poverty. Now, in his first 3 years in office, the U.S. economy chalked up an annual average growth of 2.5%. That's similar to the growth rate during the last 3 years of President Obama's administration. But like the rest of the world, the coronavirus pandemic triggered the sharpest contraction since records began, taking the fall to below 30% earlier this year. And although unemployment was at its lowest rate in half a century earlier this year, more than 20 million people have now lost their jobs as a result of the coronavirus. So how will the outcome of the debate and indeed the election affect Asia? Well, I asked James Crabtree from the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, first of all, just how much a role the economy will play in this first debate.
I think the domestic economic situation is going to be a huge focus. You have a lot of Americans out of work, and job numbers are one of the best predictors of who will win a presidential race. And Trump has put a lot of stead in repairing the American economy as one of his main messages. So yeah, I think that will cut through. I think the bigger question is whether we'll get much attention paid to the things that people might be interested in Asia, this part of the world, trade policy, China. Whether these will be a focus is something that we'll be watching for.
Yeah, in fact, you mentioned China there, and here in Asia, that is something we will be watching very closely, that increasingly contentious relationship with China. Of course, you've got the trade tensions, the technology wars. What will the debate actually say about China, do you think? Will it come up?
I think it's quite likely to come up. Both candidates have been trying to outdo each other as to who is being tough on China. Trump has tried to portray Biden as being too friendly to China. Biden has fought back, saying that actually he's just as tough, if not more so. I think I'm more skeptical as to whether we'll see much detail about how either candidate might govern. Trump looks likely to continue to use tariffs. Biden perhaps might use fewer tariffs or find ways of negotiating with China to reduce some of the tariffs. Not sure we'll see too much detail on that, but yes, I think you'll see a lot of tough language on China because both campaigns are trying to portray themselves as tougher on China in various respects.
Do you think President Biden would be more conciliatory to this region? I mean, perhaps could he return America to the Trans-Pacific Partnership? Of course, something that many in this region would like to see.
Well, I think the question is whether he'll be more conciliatory towards China. I think, as I say, he has some options. America has all of these tariffs that Trump has put up, and so Biden has the opportunity to remove some of them. And the question is, well, what will he try to get for that? In terms of the region as a whole, then yes, I think one of Biden's big approaches is that he will try and return to the traditional American policy of working with allies in the region, with Japan, with Australia, with countries like India, with whom America is friendly. So there'll be a lot more focus on multilateralism. I think in the tech war, it's going to be business as usual. I don't think there's too much difference between the two candidates. Maybe Biden will be a little bit less erratic in how he would go after companies like TikTok, but I think the suspicion of Chinese technology and trying to stop US technology getting into Chinese hands will remain whoever wins.
Now, James, as someone who's moderated a lot of high-level political sessions yourself, what is the one question that you'd like to ask these two candidates?
Well, I should say I've never moderated anything remotely like this. I think what you're trying to do is get them to say something different and interesting. You're trying to tempt them off their talking points. So they've all prepared for, well, at least Biden will have prepared, you never know with Trump, but they should have prepared lots and lots of answers, so there'll be lots of formulaic responses. And so what you're trying to do is ask them questions that they'll have to think about on the spot and say something interesting and different. So that's what I'd be trying to do. I'd be trying to, particularly in the follow-up questions, to kind of poke them a little bit to try and get something which isn't scripted.